you're bound to lose. You fascists bound to lose.
That was All You Fascists Bound to Lose. That's right, folks. We're back from our little break. Welcome to, I don't want to say fun half or post game or anything like that. It's just, you know, we're switching gears. Switching gears, part two. A little bit of a blunder, little oopsie in Canadian Parliament, right? A little small problem. It's just, it's such a little thing. I don't know why people are so upset about this. Damn it, I just had it. Where is it? I have too many tabs open.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian World veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98. He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service.
All right, yeah, we can cut it off there. Ukrainian 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS. As long as we're fighting communists, that's all they care about. That's all that matters. So, Dead Messenge, you can understand why we might have a little bit of hostility towards liberals on this program.
I wish to apologize to the House. No one, including you, my fellow parliamentarians, or the Ukraine delegation, was privy to my remarks prior to their delivery.
How a Nazi became a guest. No, this isn't. Yeah, we'll get into this. There's a bit of a Nazi problem. Rhoda has since resigned. So, yeah, liberals, they got their scapegoat. And the Speaker of the House resigned. And yeah, bingo bongo. It's all done, right? So we don't have to talk about it anymore. Yeah, he wasn't just a Wehrmacht soldier, right? That's what makes this so egregious. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of Wehrmacht soldiers living in Canada. You know, that would be bad enough. But he was literally, he volunteered for the SS. Like, the worst of the worst. The most evil people to have, like, ever existed. No. This is what's that skit where the guy in a Nazi uniform This is what it feels like being in Canada right now.
Nazi.
Excuse me? Did you just call me a Nazi? Well, you are one. Gross impertinence. Just because I'm in the NSDAP and SS doesn't make me a Nazi. Most likely, I'm also extreme right wing or what? Yes, what else could you be? I'm a concerned citizen who's afraid of foreign domination. But I'm not right wing, and above all, I'm not a Nazi. Hey, you there, do I look like a Nazi? No, I wouldn't say so.
Na, sehen Sie?
See?
Aber der ist wahrscheinlich für
He
Sie
must be a
auch
Nazi too, right?
Nazis, 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 lauter
Nazis everywhere.
Wenn einem die Argumente ausgehen, dann holt man schnell mal die.
When you're running out of arguments, it's easy to play the Nazi card.
Es hat doch nichts mit Nazi-Keule zu tun.
Sie machen sich das Leben
That
so
makes life very easy for you. Just because someone doesn't share the mainstream opinion, doesn't he isn't automatically a Nazi.
Nazi sein ist doch längst
Being a Nazi is already mainstream. You National Socialists already have the power. Oh, I forgot. In your world, everyone is a Nazi.
Nazis. Der Führer ist wahrscheinlich für Sie auch ein Nazi, was?
Ja.
Yes, that's enough. Insulting the Führer, come along. Suppose the Führer is a Nazi too. Yeah, I know, Nazi methods. Anyway, this is what it's like living in Canada right now. Zero and Elite says, and I think this is a very fair point. But
because I'm a perfect physical specimen and I'm extremely young.
Thank you, Christmas McKinley. This is a fair point, but I don't see why we can't be concerned about both, because I genuinely believe these are connected events, right? Is the treatment of Indigenous people in this country had a direct influence on Nazi policy. And so Canada, it continues to, like, again, like, it's just multi-layered shit of protecting these people. So your point is noted. Yeah, I wish people would paid more attention to the missing and murdered and buried Indigenous folks.
Beta!
Yeah, they should absolutely search the landfill. It really does anything to aid victims. Yeah, I guess so. But like what we're doing on this channel is, again,
because I'm a perfect physical specimen and I'm extremely young.
Is like pointing out the limitations of the Canadian state, which I guess most people here don't need that. But like, this was an incredible blunder, like even by Canadian standards. And my point, the kind of the theme of tonight's show is to show that like Canadians have this international stereotype of being like, you know, so sweet and polite and world beloved, all over the world. And when in reality, like, no, like Canada's an imperialist country, and there's a lot of goddamn skeletons in our closets, and you know, and of course literal skeletons on residential schools. Again, where I might add the clergy played a massive major part. Unlike what the lib in chat earlier was denying, the both Anglican and Catholic churches, aided and funded by the Canadian state, in coordination with each other, to massively physically, sexually abuse young Indigenous children, bury them on the school grounds. We were actively committing, and I mean actively committing, genocide up until 1996, when the last residential school closed. And now we continue to commit genocide through neglect, through the ignoring of clean water on the res, the boil water advisories, the lack of Indigenous justice. It goes on and on and on. Victims of communism, complete frauds, complete and utter frauds. And I know I'm going to try and do it this weekend, because Truth and Reconciliation Day is tomorrow. The Indigenous folks that I work with will be taking the day off, and since I can't work without consulting them as a professional archaeologists, I will also be taking the day off. So maybe I'll be doing every year. I usually do a special Indigenous focused stream on the issues that Indigenous people face in Canada as well. And of course, it's one thing to talk about like the victimization of Indigenous folks. What I don't see enough of is, okay, what are we going to do about it? What's next, right? What do we do about it? And it is the opinion of this channel and most people in chat, I would imagine, is the only true decolonization that can take place is to abolish the Canadian state. And we can only do that through a united working class to overthrow capitalism and demolish the Canadian state and institute a democratic workers' state that is the only true guarantee of Indigenous self-determination, in my opinion. And so yeah, and so in that sense, we have those goals in mind, right? I also believe that like the most radical elements of society are Indigenous comrades on the front lines fighting the state every single day of their lives. I have no doubt that vast portions of and elements of the revolution will absolutely be led by our Indigenous comrades. And we have to stand side by side and support them every step of the way. TRC Day is regarded by the Indigenous here as an indignity. They deserve it all, not just a day. Yeah, agreed. Again, it's one of those liberal sops to the masses. Be like, okay, well, we have a day devoted to truth and reconciliation. So we don't actually have to do anything to fix anything. We gave them a day. They can stop complaining. And that's it. That's just to buy time, kick the can down the road, as every capitalist state always does. Just buy time. Hopefully it goes away. People forget about it. Have a truth and reconciliation day. I actually quite like, there's this one phrase that came out of the Wet'suwet'en resistance against the RCMP, pushing, dirty ass pipelines through treaty territory. One elder had a sign that said, reconciliation is dead, revolution is alive. And that's exactly our policy here. Why should the oppressed people have to reconcile with their oppressors, right? Reconciliation is something that happens between two people or groups of bodies that had a fight, right? This isn't reconciliation. You can't. Why would you reconcile with your oppressors, with the people that genocided your language, your culture, your heritage, right? Your land. Why on earth would you be able to reconcile with that, with the system that caused that, right? So no, like, someone who is abused should not have to reconcile with their abusers, right? The state needs to be smashed. The only true decolonization out there is genuine socialist revolution. And that can only be accomplished by a massive united front of working people coming together and overthrowing the system. There's no reconciliation in a totally asymmetrical conflict. Yeah, exactly. V from TO. People celebrate Indigenous Day in lieu of Murderous Colonizer Day in the States. Yeah, that should definitely take off, Cupcake Star. I would like to see more of that. I'd like to see more of a consciousness arising. I think it was when the first, I'll never forget that Canada Day, after the first Indigenous children's graves were found, there was there was no mood to celebrate Canada Day. It was a very palpable holiday. No one felt like celebrating Canada after that. And like, that is, it's a tiny little drip, but that is mass consciousness changing in a direction. Now, even my liberal mom sometimes gets disgusted at seeing Canadian flags being waved from giant trucks. She's like, how come I get angry every time I see a Canadian flag now? I'm like, yeah, good, you should. Right? Now you know how some Indigenous people feel, But anyway, Zero on Ali, yeah, point taken. But this is, we're talking about the Nazis in Parliament right now, because this is kind of a big deal, and it speaks to, it's not just a single blunder, is what my point was. It speaks to a very large problem with Canada's embracing, hiding, and celebration of Nazis. And basically, we all feel like this guy right now. Like, what the fuck? This is actually a good article from the INT. Standing ovation was not just a mistake. When I drive through Canada, it amazes me how few flags I see. When you come to America, there's a flag every 4 feet in every road, everywhere. Yeah. I'll never forget the American flag truck nuts that I saw in New York State. I feel like I have to stand still and salute the American flag truck nuts. Gorzola, not to mention the fact that we've broken essentially every treaty ever written. As icing on the cake, compensation outlined in all the treaties related to natural resource exploitation has been misrepresented intentionally as free money that indigenous groups receive. When you hear some dickheads say we pay them for nothing, this is anti-indigenous propaganda based on racism and deceit. Yeah, exactly. Whenever you hear about massive payouts or the money that people receive, it is money that is owed to them. It's their money. And it usually sits in trust under the Canadian government, and interest is paid out every single year. So yeah, like our tax dollars are supporting these mooches is what I often hear from right-wing dipshits, and it's just simply not true. That's compensation that's owed to them that is accruing interest, and then the interest is paid out every year. So no, your tax dollars are not going into this. Traveling across the U.S., 85% giant U.S. flags and or crosses near the interstate for no fucking reason. Yeah. Just before we get into this, my favorite. I love just Americana and the worst of Americana. This is probably one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite photos of all time. Is this insanity? Like there's a McDonald's in the background and it's just 3 white guys being crucified in a parking lot for no reason. I don't know what the context is, but it's and there's another shirtless guy wearing shorts, and there's a little tent, presumably there's a little barbecue set up in the bottom right here. Oh fuck. I can't get enough of this shit. This shit just makes me like unreasonably happy. It's so stupid. Like brainworms has always been a problem with and Canadians too. It's just so much more subtle. Cringe pics. I'm gonna have to follow this. They were refused soda refills and made a stand because they're patriots. Oh, it's so good.
He died like a dog. He died like a coward.
Thank you, Kat. That's perfect. Beta! Okay, so, Nazis in Parliament. Is this a one-off mistake, or is this a systematic problem? Canada's Parliament has made the PR gaffe of the century by inviting a known Nazi collaborator into the House of Commons and giving him a standing ovation. While certainly an embarrassing blunder, this was no more than a one-off mistake. The incident puts the full spotlight on the pattern of Canadian imperialism of whitewashing Ukrainian fascists, and on the complete stupidity of the ruling class, blinded by the war frenzy against Russia. On September 22nd, after an address by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, House Speaker Anthony Rota invited the House to clap for 98-year-old Yaroslav Hunka, who was invited to the session as a guest. Rota described this man as a Ukrainian war hero from the Second World War who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians. Now, I've gotten into arguments from other libs who are saying that, how are they supposed to know he was a Nazi? It's just zero critical thinking on the part of our leadership. Zero critical thinking on the part of people defending Trudeau. There's a hashtag I stand with Trudeau going around. Nothing. Who fought against Russia in World War II again? Like, come on. Seriously? Like, this is what we're going with? Ukrainian war hero who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians. Do you know how many Ukrainian Nazis signed up to the SS? So something like 25,000. 4.5 million Ukrainians volunteered for the Red Army and liberated Europe from fascism and freed the Nazi death camps and the concentration camps. Holy moly. Like, it is incredible, and we're so frenzied to push anything against Russia that we've now reached the discourse in Canada that's like, well, what is a Nazi really, you know? Oh, fucking Christ. It's yeah, this was such an insane week in Canadian politics. How this member of the 1488th Hitler Reich Auschwitz Brigade was a Nazi. Later, it was revealed that Hunka fought for the Galician Division in World War II, which was the Ukrainian volunteer unit of the notorious Waffen SS. The Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies has said that the division was responsible for the mass murder of innocent civilians at a level of brutality and malice that is unimaginable. Even when they admitted he was a Nazi, they don't mention that the Ukrainian Waffen SS Division was also responsible for deaths of Ukrainians, Belorussians, Jews, Gypsies, Russians. But yeah, Ukrainians are counted in there. Yes, it is ironic to gamers that, but frankly, the capitalist powers that be will absolutely ally with anyone that is convenient, even if it is, a Jewish president paying, the Azov, the anti-Semitic Azov battalion, right? As long as they kill Russians, like, who cares? That's just all that seems to matter right now. There wasn't one person out of 300 who stopped clapping after hearing his bio. No bells, but no, nothing, Chris. Every single person in the House of Commons stood up and clapped. Every single one, including our head of our Labour Party, Jagmeet Singh. As far as I'm concerned, every single one of them needs to resign. Later, it was revealed Hunka fought for the Galician Division in World War II, which is the Ukrainian volunteer unit of the notorious Waffen SS. Oh yeah, I already read this. Sorry. The Liberal Party, faced with this massive embarrassment, is now throwing Rhoda under the bus. Rhoda insists that the decision to invite Hunka was his own, and he's already announced his resignation over the scandal. But the blame should not lie squarely with Rhoda. In the process of inviting Hunka, did not one person think to vet him? It does not exactly take a PhD in history to know who was fighting against Russia during World War II. Of the 338 members of parliament, not a single person made that connection. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, absolutely zero excuse. Of everyone, this person also needs to go. Graduated from Oxford with a master's degree in Slavonic studies. She spent years in Ukraine. She's her thesis was on Ukrainian history. Like, there is no way she didn't know. It's out of the question that she didn't know. By all means, it's simply astounding that a screw up this massive could have happened in the first place. The Canadian mainstream media has largely tried to downplay this as a simple error. Globe and Mail columnist Andrew Coyne made a post on the website formerly known as Twitter. Just say Twitter, come on, guys. Stating that he was glad to see everyone on all sides refraining from politicizing this unfortunate situation, as if inviting a Nazi into parliament isn't inherently political. And simply calling this an unfortunate situation, oh, just a little oopsie, oops all Nazis. Oh, who posted that? Where's my oops all Nazis? Shit happens, right? Oops, all Nazis. It's just a tiny little blunder. And they stood there and slapped with a stupid grin and clapped like a trained steel. Yes, exactly, Cupcake Star. That's correct. Revisionist history. America is and always culturally partisan from the jump. America's identity is based around exceptionalism and other different cultures and religions. What are you talking about? What's he talking about? Real talk. Most of these people are just as idiotic as the rest of us. They went to work. Someone said some shit. They stood up and clapped and went back to their phones. No, this is our elected leadership, and they need to be held accountable. Oops, I joined the SS on accident. Yeah. Coyne seems to think this sort of thing could happen to anyone, but it's safe to bet that the large majority of people reading this article have never associated with a war criminal. In fact, this is not the first time the Canadian government closed its eyes to Nazi collaborators in the country. After World War II, the federal government allowed 600 former Galician Division fighters to settle in Canada. This decision was justified under the pretense that they volunteered for the Nazis, not because of a love of the Germans, but because of their hatred for the Russians and the communist tyranny. Again, anything that kills Russians. As Hitler had been defeated and the Cold War was beginning, the Canadian government now considered communists to be the real threat. Don't forget, during World War II, Canada also turned away boatloads of German Jews fleeing the Nazis. A lot of these Jews, presumably also probably communists. And Canada was like, no, get out of here, turn around. So yeah, who knows? Canada indirectly participated in the Holocaust by doing that. As his 100% volunteer organization, it's not like he was drafted against his will. He literally took an oath to Adolf Hitler and was trained in fascist ideology. Exactly, Chris. Later, the Canadian government was reminded of the presence of these Nazis in Canada. It kept making excuses. In the 1980s, the famous Nazi hunter and Holocaust survivor Simon Wiesenthal sent the government a list of 217 former Galician Division members who may be living in Canada. Subsequent RCMP investigations and a 1986 public inquiry concluded that the Nazi collaborators had indeed settled down in Canada. However, none of the investigations recommended deportation because the federal government knew of these individuals' Nazi pasts when they moved into the country, and because mere membership in the SS did not constitute proof of having committed a war crime. Man, we're splitting hairs over Nazis here. Like, oh, just like the resounding stupidity is comical if it wasn't so horrifying. After insisting on action repeatedly and never seeing it, Wiesenthal eventually concluded the Canadian government didn't have the political will to hunt down ex-Nazis and refused to set foot back in the country afterward. Oh yeah, Wiesenthal, okay, just, alright, fuck this, I'm never coming to Canada again. It's worth pointing out the many monuments that exist in the country dedicated to two Nazi collaborators, including one in Oakville. Yeah, so here's our glorious cenotaph honoring the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division. This is just outside Toronto. I see this symbol, this trident, on a shitload of like people's cars on the highway, and I just wince every time I see it because most people think this is a symbol of Ukraine, and it's embarrassing. Oops, all Nazis. Let's see, 2 in Edmonton. Here we go, actual Nazi. One of these got defaced and was initially investigated as a hate crime, although they were smart enough to at least back off of that charge. How dare you accuse me of war crimes? Just because I committed war crimes does not give you the right to accuse me of war crimes. That's the stand pound bullshit. The drywallers were all wearing the Trident merch at the march. Yes, exactly. Gorzola. I don't know if it's inherently a fascist symbol, but I still am grossed out by it every time I see it. There's a street in Gatineau named after a pro-Nazi scientist until 2015. There's so many of these memorials in Canada, there's a Wikipedia page dedicated to listing them all. Well, that's cool. Holy moly. What? There's a statue in Hamilton, Ontario of this guy. Oh. Wrong time for the downward slide whistle, but the dark comedy, I appreciate it, Chris McKiddley. Yugoslav Serbs general during World War II. He was the leader of the Chetniks, a royalist and Serbian nationalist movement and guerrilla force who collaborated with the Nazis following the invasion of Yugoslavia in 1941. Wow, cool. Good job, Hamilton. Amazing. Tito kicked his ass, yeah. It's a symbol of the far right in Ukraine. It wasn't always that way, but definitely became one after 1991. Interesting. The government's association with Ukrainian fascists extends into the modern day. For example, another example includes Northern Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, who I already pointed out. Freeland has repeatedly bragged about her grandfather, Michael Shomyak, saying he worked hard to bring freedom and democracy to Ukraine. During World War II, Shomyak was the editor of a Nazi propaganda paper. When this information first got out, Freeland decried it as Russian disinformation, but all evidence points to the contrary. Freeland was also caught posing for photographs with a scarf bearing a Ukrainian far-right slogan. Yeah, here it is. I'm not sure what the slogan says. Oh, Slava Ukraine, I guess. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, the red and the black, it does not stand for anarcho-communism. You can probably guess. The red and the black symbolizes blood and soil. So the black is for the soil, the red is for the blood. What an interesting color choice. Incidentally, and not at all unrelated, the philosophy behind organic food also has its roots in the term blood and soil, right? Purity of blood, purity of soil. Organic food is, by the way, a gigantic scam. Another capitalist scam tricking us into eating the exact same equally nutritional food as more sustainable methods. In the war against Russia, Canada has actively supported fascist elements within the Ukrainian army. At the beginning of the war, Canadian officials met up with members of the infamous Azov Battalion, a neo-Nazi unit that's incorporated in Ukraine's National Guard. Government officials largely ignored reports over the political nature of the battalion and were more concerned with how the news getting out would affect their public image than anything else. Twin Tower enjoyer. Fortunately, the German government, and authority on Nazi shit, has said that the 14th Waffen SS and Bandera weren't all racist or anything bad, I'm sure. So this latest case of Nazi apologia... I don't know, how the fuck do you pronounce this word? I always see it in writing. Apologia? In Parliament is not just an accident, but flows from the logic of Canada's involvement in the war. Mark Hamill's openly ignoring this. Oh, don't break my heart again. I don't need to see... Okay, again, libs in Hollywood are the last people we should be getting our political opinions from. I blocked... what's the fuck's his name? George Takei. I couldn't fucking stand anything from him. We need a sad trombone sound clip. Yeah. Brrr. Hamill chats up Ukrainian Nazis in new video. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, it's awkward. Never meet your heroes, folks. The current war frenzy and the desire to rally public opinion behind Western imperialism's opposition to Russia helped to explain how not a single person in the government or the parliament thought of doing a little background check on a Ukrainian veteran, while they all clapped like trained seals at the mere mention of having fought the Russians. This humiliation for Canadian imperialism is well deserved. So why is Canada really involved with Ukraine? All this hullabaloo is happening while Zelensky has been touring the West to rally support for his counteroffensive against Russia. This counteroffensive has turned out to be a complete failure, and he's beginning to feel like he's being left hanging to dry by his allies. NATO countries have poured billions of dollars into their proxy war against Russia, are finding it increasingly hard to justify the war spending to their poverty-stricken populations. There are signs the U.S. is preparing public opinion to accept the idea of abandoning Ukraine. Before his trip to Canada, Zelensky received a lukewarm welcome in Washington, where he only obtained a meager $325 million in new funding. Canada gave him a warmer reception and promised him $650 million worth of new funding, eager to show to his allies that it's doing its part in the war against Russia. What a success the visit would have been if only Trudeau hadn't handed Putin this public relations victory on a platter. To be sure, Russia's claim of invading Ukraine for the purpose of denazification is pure demagoguery, and Russia has its fair amount of neo-Nazis in their own army. But Ukraine's and Canada's complacency towards fascists certainly doesn't serve to expose that lie. Yeah, this is something that they clap back all the time as well. It's like, well, the Wagner Battalion, like they're a bunch of Nazis too. It's like, yes, we're not funding the Wagner Battalion. Yeah, man, like I'm tired of being broke and poor all the time. Maybe I should just wear a Nazi uniform and march into Parliament, and then they'll hand me $650 million. Instead of achieving a victory, Trudeau now looks like a clown
we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
23 bits. Thank you so much, Christmas Italy. Don't forget, any amount of bits gets you a random little ditty, just like that, a random little funny clip, and they're all great. Oh yeah, I've been seeing this is going around too. Putin may have ordered the Russian military command to hold all Russia's initial defensive positions to create the illusion the Ukrainian counteroffensives have not achieved any tactical or operational effects, despite substantial Western report. That's because they have not. That's not where I thought this was going. But yeah, there's already reports that like, oh, Putin planted a Nazi in Canadian Parliament. And so this is all somehow Putin's fault. They're also saying that Ukraine, after getting support by the West, has regained 50% of the territory it's lost to Russia, which again is like kind of not true. The Russian strategy, like they say, like, well, they haven't taken any major cities like Kiev or Kherson or Kherson or whatever. And I'm like, the Russian strategy has never been to take the capital, right? The Russian strategy was to surround the capital, thrust in deep, destabilize the country, and pull back to a more defensible position and await negotiations. That's been the Russian strategy since the beginning. And so when they pull back, then the people act like, oh, we regained all this territory. It's like, no, you fucking didn't. Canada is about to send 50 of our own tanks, built by Canadian workers and creating jobs. We're about to send 50 of our tanks to Ukraine, and they're going to be wiped out in a matter of hours. Russia is extremely well dug in deep and awaiting negotiations. And unfortunately, nobody on the West, until recently, has been talking about negotiations. And now it sounds like the West is slowly and quietly preparing the ground for the public to start rejecting new aid for Ukraine. Like, no, we can't win this war. You're gonna have to cede some territory. Probably still not going to join NATO. I don't know. I really don't know how this is going to end. It's just further, again, like, for those of you who were with me when we read through imperialism, you'll see that imperialism and capitalism inevitably ends with carving and recarving of the world, national boundaries and borders for the control of resources. And I see this as no different. I probably the Donbass, Luhansk, and Donetsk will be it'll be like a demilitarized zone, or it could very well be annexed by Russia. I don't know enough about Crimea to make a call there, but Russia in good faith might even say, hey, look, like, this is you can have this territory back, but it has to be demilitarized. Hundreds of kilometers of trenches and bunkers. Russia's not going anywhere. Yeah, not to mention the place is mined to all hell, and it's imperative that we send as many cluster bombs and depleted uranium as we can. Apparently, it's truly a quagmire. Russia is well supplied. Yeah. And Ukraine's begging for scraps from the West. Like, there is no winning this. I really don't see a winning in this. Instead of achieving a victory, Trudeau now looks like a clown on the world stage, and he has exposed the hypocrisy of the West's proxy war. The government has always claimed that it is sending supplies to Ukraine to help defend freedom and democracy, right? You know, Zelensky was on Letterman's Netflix show saying like, oh, you're the only one in the world defending freedom right now. And I'm like, what fucking freedom? The guy banned every single oppositional political party, right? There's no free press. All the communists in Ukraine have to organize underground now. There's, you know, people are being served recruiting papers against their will. People are being conscripted, and they get like a week of training, and they're sent to the front line, and they survive for maybe hours. It is an absolute nightmare on the front lines right now. It's basically like a Verdun style stalemate in eastern Ukraine right now. Yes, Ukraine violated the Minsk agreements multiple times. Their idea of freedom fighters includes people who fought for the Waffen SS. That is enough to question their motives. Canadians are finding it increasingly hard to make ends meet. The government is clapping for Nazis and spending hundreds of millions of weapons to weaken our rival on the chessboard of imperialism. In reality, Canada has encouraged and supported this war for the sake of its imperialist allies in NATO, particularly America. Russia has become one of the principal enemies on the world stage for the Western imperialist powers. What this war really is about is keeping Ukraine in the fold of Western imperialism to better plunder it, weakening Russia as much as possible in the process. Yes, I believe that is the entire purpose of us continuously funding Ukraine to just enough to keep the war going, right? Just enough, just enough sugar for the gas tank there, just to keep it going. They want to weaken Russia on the world stage. Most importantly, to isolate China, right? Let's be real here. And sooner or later, all this shit will backfire on the West. And which is why it's imperative that we organize revolution in the imperial core sooner rather than later. Russia and China are Canada's main competition on the continent of Africa for all of our sweet, sweet blood diamond mines. Yeah, it's not just diamonds. It's cobalt's a big one. Oil's a big one. All sorts of minerals. All sorts of extremely important minerals, especially for, you know, uranium, gold. Yeah. Chris McKidley and myself, we just read a great book called Extracting Profit, and how Africa, again, it harkens back to, you know, if you want a quick summary, you should definitely go listen to that, the Parenti speech. You know, Africa is deliberately kept underdeveloped in order to make it easier to exploit them. Another winter of pensioners having to choose between food or heat, so the cocaine king can throw more Ukrainians into the meat grinder. Who do you mean by the cocaine king? That's kind of catchy, but it's pretty funny. Who are you referring to? I'm not exactly sure. As much as Canada likes to present itself as the nice and peaceful country on the world stage, it is an imperialist power. It's willing to use any means necessary at its disposal to further its interests, even if that includes turning a blind eye to the crimes of living monsters like Hunka and the leaders of the Azov Battalion. Any claim that the war is being fought over freedom only serves to cover up its true nature. He likes to party. Yeah, sure. Oh.